this is going to be our last part of chapter 11. You can hear my Rufus going all over the place. Shh, Rufus. So one of the things they did with so many animals like dying out, one of the very smart things that the United States government actually implemented was the hunting and fishing laws. It seems kind of arbitrary that you have to pay for the hunting, for fishing. You know, you already pay taxes for these parks and stuff like that, but then you still have to pay for that. It's actually a very, very, very pragmatic reason for doing that. By charging and regulating when hunting and fishing takes place, the government is actually able to protect breeding season. They're also able to kind of regulate the population. So if you have a ton of deer growing, if you have a ton of deer breeding because of a good rainy season, they tend to give out more hunting permits so they can cull the herd. Now, if you have a lot of and you know, certain kinds of fish that you know, like rainbow trout is, I think, right now threatened, not endangered, not critically endangered, threatened. So they can reduce the number of fishing permits they give. So it's just a way for them to control and control how many hunters are out there killing what type of animals. You know, they can encourage the killing of certain animals, and then they can discourage the killing of certain kinds of animals. So this has actually been a very successful law. Here are three very good examples of animals that have actually benefited from this kind of regulation, because while it feels really bad to kill any of the animals, I mean, for most people, overpopulation is still a problem, because overpopulation leads to disease, and there's like more competition. There's a lack of space and lack of resources. They are going to die out. Instead of just dying out, they also bring in certain diseases, because as the population gets weaker and weaker, you're going to have a lot more disease, and that's going to cause more problems than actually culling the herd. Now we're going to get into the little sad part of it, the Endangered Species Act. I know those numbers don't seem interesting or related. So under the Endangered Animals Act was established in 1973, and that's where they started categorizing things. Endangered were those that were in imminent danger of extinction. Now, in the past couple of years, we've added categories to endangered. So if there is an organism if there are animals, plants, whatever, less than 100 of them left, we call them critically endangered. For example, these a few of them are really success stories. The gray wolf in the 70s was about 29 of them left in the forests of Oregon and that area. There was about 29 of them left in the forests of Oregon, California, and those areas. There was still a lot more left in like Alaska, but in that area, there was only 29 of them left. So if we were to categorize the gray wolf today, we would call it a critically endangered species. Remember, once the animal falls below that carrying capacity, they do need a lot of help to come back. One of the biggest helps we provide them is in terms of captive breeding, which we'll get to in a later point. Right now, we have about 1,700 of them. This can be actually considered to be a success story. The Federally Endangered Species Preservation Act. This is the predecessor to the Endangered Species Act. Just remember that. The other animal that we've done really, really well with is the grizzly bear. Now, the grizzly bear was down to 140 in all over the United States, and now we're close to 600. So we have done a very good job of protecting certain species. Now, unfortunately, again, these species also fall into the category of the cuteness effect. I'm not saying that the grizzly bear is cute. It kind of depends on what the narrative behind these animals are. Nobody is losing sleep over most of the organisms that are in the ocean that are dying out. We don't see them, so there's not a cute campaign to rescue the blobfish. I mean, there is a campaign, but I don't think they're doing very well. So there is what animals we choose to put on the endangered list, what animals we choose to put money into to save, kind of unfortunately depends on what kind of human perception we have for them. This is a very sad story of the western black rhino. In 2013, the last western black rhino died. There are 5 subspecies of rhinos. Each and every one of them is actually endangered. The Javan rhino, I think there's less than 5 of them left. The Sumatran rhino, the last one that was not in captivity, was killed, I think, in 2013 or 14. The western black rhino, which is the largest of the rhinos, are all gone. And remember, once these animals are gone, there's actually no way to bring it back. There are plans and there are certain things that people are doing to bring it back. Is that once you go into the phylogeny chart to try to see if we can breed 2 or 3 different animals together and try to get a close approximation of the animal that went extinct. So think about it as if the Chihuahua went extinct, you could like go down and see if there is a mixed breed somewhere, and take the mixed breed and try to like recreate the Chihuahua. Now again, it's possible with the Chihuahua because the Chihuahua is a subspecies and dogs have a large genetic variation. But when the animal population comes down to 60 or 70 of them, the genetic variation goes down, and that is a little more difficult. Threatened, these are animals that are likely to be endangered very soon. The American alligator that used to be on the endangered list is now on the threatened list. So animals can move back and forth within them. Vulnerable are those animals that are naturally very rare. So anything that's endemic would come into the category of vulnerable species. So the ESA does they do a wide variety of things in order to protect. So going back to the hippo thing, which is habitat protection, pollution and all of that. So these guys do a lot of things to actually protect the animal. Some of the biggest things they do is, again, like we talked with the hunting and fishing, from the hunting and fishing protections, there's a lot of habitat protection. They do have a criminal division of their law that prohibits selling, possessing, or transporting of these animals. They do not allow for they are pretty good at saving these animals, but again, what animals we put on that list depends on how that animal is presented to the human population. So how humans view that animal really makes a difference on how much money is put into it, how much awareness is created, and all of that kind of depends on how humans feel about the animal. We are more likely to save an animal that we know, we recognize, and we like. That is very important. We're more likely to save the panda bear than we are the hyena. The hyena is not, at present, is not endangered, but just to give you an example, the hyena is a more weird looking animal. It doesn't fit into the cuteness factor of the human narrative, so we are more likely to save a panda than we are the hyena. How the Endangered Act works, basically, these are a couple of different things. One of the things is they actually have a very well-designed species survival and recovery. Under species survival and recovery, they do a lot of captive breeding. They do a lot of habitat, like quarantining the habitat, making sure that other people don't enter that habitat. There is an environment impact statement made. They do not allow you to build anything in that area. So it's very strict. Now, there is a downside to this, that sometimes when animals get taken off the endangered species list, the laws that pertain to building and usage of the land where these animals were being monitored still stay. So sometimes in our pursuit to save the Delta smelt or some other bug and some other frog, people get the shorter end of the stick because land is still at a premium and people still need a place to stay. The other thing, like I said, was habitat rehabilitation. So if there is a habitat that has been polluted, or the waterway has been polluted, or they've built a dam or done something, so they do take steps to kind of clean up the environment and make it more hospitable for these animals. Plans, permits, and agreements, they come up with a lot of, like, again, hunting permits are a part of it. They do come up with interstate agreements, so that something that might be endangered in California but is not endangered in Oregon does not mean that people from California can go out to Oregon and like kill all their wolves. So they have an interstate agreement. They always have a recovery plan, which is almost always involves some kind of captive breeding, some kind of trading in of these animals from different parts of the world. In the case of the rhinos, for the Sumatra rhinos and the Java rhinos, zoos in Cincinnati actually put in a lot of effort into saving these animals. However, it wasn't possible. Obviously, habitat conservation, there is a no surprise rule. They do want to keep tabs on the animals. They track these animals. And there's also, like, they constantly are trying to monitor what the population growth rates is. These are just numbers. As you can see, this is what we were talking about, recovery plans. These tend to take a long time to the recovery plan is not one generation or two generation. It takes years and it is very expensive. It requires a ton of political will. It requires a ton of like will from the people. And it also impacts economic interests. For example, the Delta smelt in Central California Valley is a very good example for that. However, we just have to do it. Once the species is gone, it's gone forever. And it's not like these species are, isolated islands and they don't have impact on other things around them. Every species we kill is eventually going to cause more harm to us. Remember, we are on the top of the food chain. The smallest thing you kill, you kill for good. I mean, you eradicate, is eventually going to have 100-fold influence on our health and sustenance. Again, like I was talking about it in the past slides, because it is so expensive and because it requires so much of political will, we tend to choose animals that suit our narrative, that are cute, that are beautiful, that was featured in a movie, that makes a good poster, that makes a good t-shirt. We don't feature the hyena or the blobfish. Couple of types of species that we tend to protect. Now, you guys all know what a keystone species is. You know what an indicator species is. You do know what an umbrella species is. For example, it's a large block of undisturbed habitat. They live in one habitat. They need a large area of it. The part that I was talking about the attractiveness, flagship species. We tend to save more flagship species than we save anything else. However, there has been a really, the bald eagle has been a great success story in the United States. Falcons have been a great success story in the United States. The whooping crane has been a great success story. And eventually the pandas are going to be a great success story. Unfortunately, that flagship species never reached the Javan tiger. The Javan tiger died out in 2006, I think. The flagship species for the tiger was the Royal Bengal tiger or the Bengal tiger. And both those species, they're not doing great, but they are coming back. The Javan tiger, however, did not fall under the flagship species, and the last one died in 2006. Okay. So I'm going to talk about the private land and critical habitat in the next